My stepmother sold me to a mafia boss, then learned I was the woman he'd loved in secret. She thought she was selling me like property. She didn't know she was sending me back to the one man who once swore he'd burn the world just to keep me safe. The moment I stepped into that cathedral, wrapped in lace and silence, I recognized him. Not as the Mafia heir, not as the nightmare mothers warned their daughters about, but as the boy who once kissed me under paper lanterns and promised he'd return. But we were strangers now. His jaw was stone. My heart was a battlefield. Everyone believed I was just another purchased bride. Everyone but him. He saw the necklace, the ring, his ring, and everything exploded. What happens next isn't a love story. It's a reckoning. Stories like this deserve to be remembered. Subscribe and share. "The blue room," the butler whispered. "Mrs. Hart is waiting." Vivian reserved the blue room for punishments wrapped as favors. Porcelain gleamed. A ledger lay open like a wound. "Amelia," she said gently, "you're an adult now. Time to save the family." "I already do," I said. "I teach, I play recitals. You will marry." A velvet folder slid toward me. Names blacked out, figures not. It wasn't a proposal. It was a receipt. "For your gambling?" I asked. "For our future." She dabbed her lips. "He will clear what we owe." "Who?" "A man respectable enough to keep you alive." Her gaze drifted to my father's violin. "Unless you prefer I sell that instead." I signed to save the violin. By dusk, a convoy swallowed the house. Men with quiet hands escorted me to a penthouse cut from the skyline. "Miss Hart," a bodyguard said, opening a door. "He'll see you now." A man in a tuxedo stood at the window. He didn't turn. He didn't need to. Every nerve in me recognized his silhouette. Kolya. No, Nikolai Vasiliev, the name newspapers used when someone vanished. He finally looked. Recognition detonated and vanished beneath discipline. The boy who'd once kissed me under paper lanterns was now an heir with 1,000 men and no softness left. "I expected a stranger," he said. "I expected a grave," I replied. Silence spread. Then, "So the bride my contact purchased is the girl who disappeared." "The bride my stepmother sold," I said, fingers finding the chain beneath my collarbone. His gaze dropped to it. He knew the ring I hid there. I palmed it before the past could break me open. "Sit," he said. "I prefer to stand." For a minute, we measured the ruins between us. He surrendered first, a breath barely audible. "You'll be safe under my name," he said. "Driver, security, and a leash? If that keeps you breathing." The door opened. Vivian swept in. Silver dress, photo-ready smile. "Mr. Vasiliev, isn't she lovely?" "She's frightened," he said. "Fear flatters some brides." "Not mine." "Mine." The word landed like a chain. "We'll hold the ceremony tomorrow," Vivian chirped. "I've arranged a cathedral and the press." "Do thank our benefactor, Amelia." "Is he a benefactor?" I asked. "Or the highest bidder?" "We are all making sacrifices." Her smile thinned. Nikolai stepped closer. "From this moment, my men replace yours." "That won't be necessary," Vivian said. "It isn't a request." He extended his hand. Not affection, jurisdiction. I placed my fingers in his because Vivian would weaponize refusal. Cameras flashed as we walked into the mirrored hall. In the elevator, I said, "Why didn't you meet me?" He didn't look at me. "Why didn't you write?" I did. For months. I never saw a letter. "Vivian handled the mail," I said, "and my sources told me you left with a patron." His mouth hardened. "She said you were dead." We watched the numbers rise. The doors opened on a garage that smelled like gasoline. We did not move. "She told me you forgot me," I said. He touched my wrist, distant. and guided me to the car. City lights smeared into constellations on the ride to his estate. At the gates, he finally spoke. "Tomorrow, you'll stand beside me. No one touches you. Do you understand?" I watched my reflection. Veil, lace, stranger. Yes. He escorted me to a suite. A gown waited, pale as frost. A guard delivered a velvet ring box. The diamond inside was simple. "Rest," Nikolai said from the doorway. "There are people who would like you gone before the vows." "Vivian?" "And others who prefer me on my knees." He paused. "I'll take the first sip of anything poured for you." I couldn't tell if that was tenderness or cruelty. "Why are you doing this, besides business?" "Because I don't lose what's mine twice." Sleep came in shards. Dawn arrived with stylists and whispers. The cathedral glowed with chandeliers and white roses. Vivian sat near the aisle, face arranged into mournful pride. Guards in black stood along the walls. The organ breathed. I walked, each step a note my father taught me to hold. Nikolai waited at the altar, formal as a statue, until he saw me. His eyes softened, then locked down, a tide mastered by will. We joined hands. The world steadied. The vows began. A calm hissed in a guard's ear. Nikolai's thumb pressed once against my pulse. I lifted my chin. The chain at my throat shifted against lace. He saw it, the small ring from a summer too bright to be real. Heat crackled through his gaze. His mouth parted as if to say my true name. Something moved behind the flowers. Nikolai drew his gun and turned, not toward me but past me, aiming at a shadow where the arrangements were too precise. Gasps struck the room. Guns appeared in the hands of men pretending to be guests. "Down," he breathed. I didn't drop. I couldn't look away from him, from the man who, despite the weapon, was the only anchor in a world built on lies. The first shot cracked. White petals leaped. Guards swarmed. Guests screamed. Vivian rose with theatrical horror that almost hid her satisfaction. I understood then. The marriage wasn't a beginning. It was a return. Someone had always planned to end it at the altar. Nikolai moved, shield and threat in one breath. His men answered his silent order. My life buckled into two halves, the part that believed I'd been sold and the part that knew I was being delivered back to the only person who had ever felt like home. As the cathedral dissolved into smoke and echoes, my mind ran the other way, back to a pier lit by paper lanterns, back to a boy who wasn't a prince and a girl who wasn't a pawn. Back to the night everything started and nothing was yet broken. And this time, memory opened the door I had slammed shut before. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us keep these stories alive, and trust me, the best part is yet to come. Now let's get back to it. Memory did not drift in gently. It struck like a wave breaking against stone. The cathedral dissolved into warm air and sunlight, the kind that smelled like sea salt and citrus and youth. I was 17 again, running barefoot across the docks because if I stayed in that practice room one more hour, I would scream. The academy expected perfection. My father, before he died, expected discipline wrapped in devotion. Vivian expected performance that she could parade for other women over champagne. I just wanted to breathe. I had taken my violin and my backpack and boarded the cheapest bus south, leaving sheet music and scolded tears behind. I found the ocean, or maybe it found me. The pier was peeling paint and gull cries. A little diner perched at its end sold lemon soda in glass bottles and fried shrimp that tasted like salt and heaven. I sat on the railing, hair blown wild by the breeze, violin case leaning against my leg. That's where he sat beside me. Not close, not imposing, just near. He wore a white shirt rolled to the elbows, the fabric clinging to someone who worked, not posed. His knuckles were bruised, but his eyes were soft. So soft it made me want to look away. "Do you play?" he asked, nodding toward the case. "I try," I said. He smiled. "Try for me?" I didn't know why I did. Maybe because he didn't say should or must or you owe me this performance. He just asked. I played a simple tune, my father's lullaby, unfinished in places where grief had frayed memory. When I stopped, the silence was gentle. "It sounds like you left something behind," he said quietly. "I did," I whispered. He didn't ask what. He didn't ask why I had run barefoot from a world of polished marble and private academies. He simply let the quiet sit between us like a language. "I'm Kolya," he said. He offered his hand. I should have known something was wrong then. The way he said his name like it was borrowed. The way he watched the horizon like it was a border instead of scenery. But I was 17 and aching for something real. "Amelia," I said. He didn't say it was pretty. He didn't repeat it slowly to coil himself around it. He just nodded like he understood something about it. About me. And that was how it started. We were not dramatic at first, not whirlwind, not cinematic. We were small things, walks along the beach with sand clinging to our ankles, shared fries from a paper basket, playing cards on the pier at sunset and accusing each other of cheating. My violin music drifting over the tide. His quiet laughter, the kind men laugh when they do not yet know how to cry. He never talked about his family. I never talked about Vivian. We were two ghosts wearing skin, trying to feel alive. One night, while I tuned my violin, I asked, "What do you do?" "Really?" He took too long to answer. He said, "I handle business for people who don't want their names involved." "That sounds illegal." "It usually is." He watched me carefully, waiting for fear. But I just nodded, because what mattered wasn't the legality. It was the honesty. So I told him my truth. "My stepmother doesn't love me. She loves how I look on paper. The music, the grades, the posture. She loves the shape of me, not me." "Nay." He looked at me the way no one had ever looked at me before. Like I was real. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't need to. We lasted 3 months. 3 months of shared mornings and long walks and laughter that wasn't forced. 3 months where I was just a girl and he was just a boy, both pretending the world wasn't already reaching for us. The night before I had to return to the academy, we watched fireworks from the lifeguard tower. I cried without meaning to. "Don't cry," he murmured, brushing my cheek with calloused fingers. "I won't disappear." "You don't know that." He shook his head. "No, I don't. But I can choose." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver ring. Not expensive, not heavy. A circle of metal hammered by hand. "I don't know what I can promise you except that I'll come back," he said, "and I'll come back for you." I gave him my ring in return. Thin gold with engraving worn down by time. My father once gave it to my mother. It was the only thing I had left of him that Vivian hadn't sold. We pressed them into each other's palms like vows. No priest, no audience, no vows spoken aloud. Just us. And of all the vows I've ever heard, that one was the truest. Then summer ended. I returned. Vivian waited. Her smile was knife-sharp. "Who is he?" she asked. No anger, just calculation. "A boy," I said. "You won't see him again." She took my phone, my letters, my freedom. "I wrote to him," I whispered. "I tried." Vivian laughed. "My dear, if he wanted you, he would have come through the door." Men don't lose what they value. I believed her. Because I was 17. Because grief makes fools of the tender. What I didn't know, what I would learn years later, was that Kolya did come. He stood outside the academy gates for 6 hours in rain that tasted like iron. Vivian met him there. "She doesn't want to see you," she told him. "She's with someone better now." And for months afterward, She showed me nothing. No letters, no messages, no proof. Just silence. Silence shaped like abandonment. So I forced myself not to love him, not to remember him, not to ache for him. I learned how to play music without feeling, how to breathe without longing, how to survive, but the body remembers what the mind buries. My fingers still found the ring at night. The memory shattered. The cathedral rushed back in, white roses crushed under fleeing feet, guards shouting, gunfire swallowing air. Nikolai was still in front of me, arm extended, gun held steady. But now I did not see the Mafia heir with blood on his hands. I saw the boy offering me a ring on a sand-warm night, whispering that he would come back for me. My heart broke, not from fear, not from the chaos, but from the realization. We had both been waiting. We had both been hurting. We had both been lied to. For 5 years. The veil trembled against my cheek. The ring on my chain felt like a brand. "Nikolai," I whispered. Not to the man he was now, but to the boy he had been. He heard it. I saw the recognition bloom. The past opened its mouth and roared. And then, another shot rang out. He grabbed me, pulling me down, shielding me with his body as the world collapsed around us. But the collapse had already happened years ago. This was just the moment we finally realized it. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe and like this video. It helps more people discover stories like this one. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now take a deep breath, because what happens next will change everything. The gunfire stopped before the silence did. Even after the guards dragged the attackers out and the cathedral doors slammed shut, the air still rang with shock. I couldn't tell if the trembling in my hands came from fear or recognition, or the terrible understanding that the past I had buried had just clawed itself back into the light. Nikolai didn't look at me as he holstered his gun. He didn't comfort me. He didn't reach for me the way he used to when I was just Amelia and he was just Kolya. His jaw was set like stone, his eyes sharp and calculating. The boy who once brushed sand from my eyelashes was gone. In his place stood the heir to an empire of violence. "Escort the bride to the estate," he ordered. Not Amelia, the bride, a role, a possession, a title purchased. His men surrounded me and guided me out, leaving Vivian behind to weep dramatically into a lace handkerchief. She looked like a grieving saint in silver. I knew enough now to understand that saints could be murderers with better lighting. The car ride back to Nikolai's estate was silent. I watched the reflections of passing streetlights flicker over the tinted windows. My wedding dress felt like armor that didn't fit. The bouquet in my lap was crushed, either by accident or by the knowledge that the flowers were meant to decorate my grave. When we arrived, Nikolai walked 3 steps ahead of me through the marble entry hall. "Your room has been prepared," he said. "Your room, not ours." Not that I expected otherwise. The space between us was a chasm now, wide, sharp, and carved by 5 years of silence and one monstrous lie. I hesitated. "Cole dash dash." He stopped. The temperature in the room dropped. "Don't," he said without turning. "You don't get to call me that anymore." My throat tightened. "Then what should I call you?" His voice was not raised, but it cut cleanly. "Nikolai. Or husband. Whichever costs you less to say." He walked away before I could answer. The next morning, Vivian arrived at the estate, all pearls and false tenderness, her voice honeyed as she directed florists and photographers and caterers as if yesterday's ambush had been a minor inconvenience, like rain during photos. "Amelia, dear," she called brightly across the foyer, "you and Nikolai will be the talk of every society column by evening. The city adores a romantic tragedy turned victory." "Victory," I repeated under my breath. "Yes, a wedding after all this hardship. It's practically legendary." She placed a hand over her heart. I'm just so relieved he still wants you. I almost laughed. The cruelty was so precise it was art. Nikolai walked past us, speaking to his advisor. He didn't look at me. He didn't have to. His presence filled a room like weather. Vivian watched him go, then leaned toward me. Do try not to look so shaken, Amelia. He prefers his bride composed. Men like him have little patience for nerves. Men like him. Men like him. She said it like he was a category. A breed you bred daughters for. I excused myself before I broke something. I didn't mean to overhear the call. I'd only gone upstairs to breathe, to hide, to remember how to stay upright when the ground wasn't steady. But then I heard Vivian's voice, sharp now, stripped of sugar. No, the first attempt failed, but there are other ways to ensure the transition, she said. My blood stilled. Yes, the moment the marriage is finalized, the estate assets will shift. I just need her out of the picture cleanly. Something subtle. An accident. Poison, perhaps. A pause. No. Not until after the wedding. If she dies before, he inherits nothing through her. If she dies after, everything flows correctly. My lungs stopped working. Vivian didn't just sell me. She scheduled my death like an appointment. I pressed a hand over my mouth and backed away silently, the hall spinning. My wedding dress rustled, a whisper of silk that sounded like betrayal. I clutched the skirt to keep quiet and slipped down a different corridor, heart slamming against bone. I made it into an empty sitting room before I collapsed into a chair. Survive. Survive long enough to escape. I whispered it to myself over and over until my pulse slowed. When evening came, Nikolai found me in the garden. The lantern lights cast soft amber along the stone path. Night air smelled of jasmine, too gentle for the things being arranged inside the house. You've been avoiding me, he said. You've been watching me, I answered. He didn't deny it. He stood across from me, hands in his pockets, posture rigid. He was a wall built out of discipline, grief, and anger he didn't want to look at. You came back for money, he said. Or power. No, I whispered. His eyes were flint. Then why? Because I didn't know, I said, voice cracking. I didn't know you waited. I didn't know you came. I didn't know she lied. He looked away then, just for a second, but enough to show the wound. You expect me to believe that? He said. No, I expect you to believe whatever hurts less. Something flickered in him. Pain, recognition, memory. Then what do you want now? He asked. Time, I said. Time to stay alive. He stilled. And in that stillness, something shifted. Subtle, but real. He didn't step closer, but he didn't walk away either. The silence between us was no longer absence. It was the outline of something broken that hadn't decided whether to heal. My hand rose to my throat without thinking. I touched the necklace. The chain warmed under my fingers. The small ring pressed against my skin like a heartbeat. Nikolai saw. His expression didn't change. His breathing did. For a moment, I saw the boy again, the one who stayed under the street lamp, waiting for letters that never came. His voice was quiet. Rough. You kept it. I never stopped, I said. Something in him faltered, but only for a moment. He straightened. The air chilled again. Stay close to me during the reception tomorrow. Don't drink anything unless I touch it first. Don't step out of my sight. Do you understand? I nodded. This wasn't affection, this was strategy. Protection as leverage. Guarding what was his, not because he loved me, but because someone else wanted to take me away. But survival didn't care about motive. Thank you, I whispered. He didn't answer. He just turned and walked back toward the house. His shadow trailed behind him like a memory. And I followed, not because he commanded it, but because the world behind us wanted me dead. Vivian wasted no time turning tragedy into theater. By the next morning, invitations fluttered across the city like confetti, announcing luncheons, charity teas, bridal showcases. The new Mrs. Vasilyev, curated and displayed like a priceless artifact. Vivian moved through the estate directing florists, stylists, and society women with the serene piety of a saint who had never sinned. "My Amelia has always been refined," she told a gathering of heiresses and wives in the east parlor, her voice warm enough to scorch. "So gentle, so grateful. She understands the privilege of marrying into such a powerful family. Grateful." The word clung to my ribs like dust. They all turned to look at me, my dress soft ivory silk, my hair swept into an obedient chignon. I smiled because silence was safer. Then Vivian brought her forward. Serafina, golden hair in soft waves, eyes pale blue like polished glass, lips pink and curving in perfect sympathy. Vivian's real daughter, the one born from her blood, ambition, and carefully engineered alliances. Serafina insisted on helping with the arrangements, Vivian said. She wanted to make sure her sister's new life begins beautifully. "Sister," a title held up like a trophy, sharp-edged enough to cut. Serafina took my hand lightly. Her grip was cool, feather-soft, entirely meant to look harmless. "I've heard so much about you," she said, voice sugar. "You must be overwhelmed. The press attention, the wedding size. I can only imagine how new all this must feel for you." There. The word that wasn't a word. New, meaning she didn't belong here. I held her gaze. "New things can be learned," I said pleasantly. "I adapt quickly." Her smile thinned just a shade. War recognized war. Rumors began that same afternoon. That I had pursued Nikolai, that I had been kept before I was married, that my father had died bankrupt and I had begged my way into wealth. I didn't have to ask who started them. Serafina's smile said enough. At a luncheon, a pianist began to play, a soft, familiar melody. I froze. It was the first movement of the piece my father composed for me. The last piece we played together before illness hollowed him out. The notes spilled through the ballroom, warm and aching. The teacup slipped in my hand. Porcelain cracked against saucer. I inhaled too sharply, like drowning. A hand touched my shoulder. Nikolai. He didn't say a word, but he stood close enough that his presence steadied the air around me. His eyes stayed on my face, studying every flicker. Not cold, not cruel, searching, as if he was trying to remember something he had once known by heart. Dmitri stood near him, arms crossed, gaze flicking between us. He watched the way I steadied myself. He watched the way Nikolai watched me, and I could almost hear the realization forming in him. This is not just a contract bride. That evening, invitations went out for the dress fitting at the city's oldest couture house. A place with gold-framed mirrors, crystal lighting, and gowns that cost more than apartments. Vivian linked arms with me as we entered, smile bright enough to blind. Serafina drifted beside us like a reflection, perfect and practiced. "My darling," Vivian said, "you'll want to make sure the train is dramatic. Something unforgettable." "Unforgettable to whom?" I asked softly. She squeezed my arm just a little too tight. "To the right people." We entered the fitting room. The chandelier above was enormous, tiered crystal, glittering like frozen tears. It hung lower than it should, a careless detail only someone with reason to notice would see. Reason like overhearing your stepmother plan your death. Serafina fussed with pins and clips while seamstresses fluttered around me. Vivian stepped aside to speak in a low voice with a man I didn't recognize, maintenance staff by the look of his uniform. He nodded, walked toward the hallway, disappeared into the ceiling access. I inhaled slowly, steadily. I was being murdered with chandeliers and organza. So civilized, so clean. The seamstresses backed away, murmuring admiration. "Please walk forward," one said. "We need to see how the skirt moves." I took one step, then another. The chandelier creaked, a slow groan of metal weight shifting. I didn't breathe. The sound sharpened, and suddenly, an arm wrapped around my waist and yanked me back. So strong and swift, the world spun. The chandelier crashed to the floor exactly where I had been standing. Glass exploded. Crystal shards scattered like diamonds across marble. Gasps, screams, the scent of dust and fear. Nikolai had crossed the room before the chandelier even fell. I didn't know how he knew. I didn't know how he got there. I only knew his hand was gripping my waist so tightly, it anchored me back to my body. Vivian shrieked on cue, hands to her mouth. "My goodness, what an accident! How terrible!" Dmitri was already scanning the ceiling. That chain didn't slip. Someone cut it. Serafina turned pale and perfectly silent. Nikolai didn't look at either of them. He looked at me. Our eyes met. No distance, no armor. And something broke. Not loudly, not visibly. But the kind of breaking that changes the ground under your feet forever. He held me like I had weight again. Like my life mattered. Like losing me once was enough. His voice was low, dangerous. "From now on, no one touches the bride without my permission." Vivian smiled through trembling lips. Of course. Of course. Such a shock. Perhaps the fitting should end. "No," Nikolai said. "It ends when I say it ends." His arm didn't move from my waist. Not possession, not performance, instinct. The kind born long before the world taught us to fear each other. And in that moment, with crystal shards glittering like stars around us, I realized something. Whatever had been broken between us was not dead. It was waiting. And now, it had begun to wake. He found me on the balcony that evening, the sky dimming into dusk, soft lavender fading into cobalt. The city stretched below, lights flickering awake, cars humming like distant bees, life continuing unaware that someone had just tried to kill me with a chandelier. He didn't announce himself. He never needed to. His presence was gravity. "Why did you come back?" he asked. Not what happened. Not, "Are you hurt?" Just that. I gripped the iron railing, fingers whitening. "Do you think I wanted this?" "You signed the contract." I laughed once, sharp, humorless. Vivian placed the pen in my hand and aimed my grief like a weapon. I was trying to save what was left of my father. "But you—" My voice wavered. "You think I came for the money?" He didn't respond, which meant yes. The wind caught the veil loosely pinned in my hair, tugging it like a ghost. I stared out at the skyline so I wouldn't have to look at him. "I once loved someone," I said softly. "More than music, more than breath. He promised he'd return for me. I waited. I wrote. I prayed." My throat tightened. "But he never came back." Silence. Nikolai didn't move, but something in him did. His shoulders, his breath, his jaw, small, almost imperceptible shifts, like the cracking of ice before collapse. "Say his name," he said. I closed my eyes. "I can't." "You won't," he corrected. My lashes stayed lowered, but I could feel his stare, heavy, unblinking. "You think I didn't look for you?" he said, voice still controlled but no longer cold, no longer steel, just splintered, brittle rage. "You think I walked away?" "I waited!" I spun toward him. "I waited so long it ruined me." "Weeks, months. I thought you would come. I thought you were coming." I checked the gate every hour like a child waiting for a miracle. His jaw clenched so sharply I heard his teeth grind. "I stood outside your academy for 6 hours in the rain," he said. "Your stepmother came out. She told me you'd chosen someone else, that you wanted nothing more to do with me." My heart stopped. "She told me you died," I whispered, shaking. She said you were shot in a street fight, that you were gone. I didn't give up on you. I grieved you. His breath came uneven now, barely contained storm under skin. Vivian had told us both the same lie, only tailored to the wound she wanted to inflict. She didn't separate us by force. She separated us by despair. Nikolai took a step closer, another. The distance vanished until his shadow merged with mine. If you had written me even one more time, he began. I did. The words tore out of me. Every day, for months. I poured everything into those letters, and she took every one. His eyes closed, and for the first time since the wedding, he looked like the boy I loved. Stripped bare, hurting, human. When he spoke again, his voice held a tremor no one else would ever hear. Amelia. My name was a wound, a prayer, a history. I didn't realize I was crying until he lifted a hand instinctively, then stopped, fingers hovering inches from my cheek, as if touching me might break him. Or me. We didn't touch. We just breathed in the same quiet, painful orbit. Vivian watched from the hallway. She saw his posture, my tears, the rawness between us, and she came to the worst possible conclusion, that I had influence now, that Nikolai was not an unshakable wall, that love, misunderstood, damaged, bruised, still lived underneath. And Vivian did what she always did when threatened. She sharpened herself. That night, when the estate quieted and servants withdrew, Vivian slipped into the garden wearing a silk robe the color of ash. She walked to the west gate where a black SUV idled without lights. A man stepped out. Thick shoulders, hands scarred, eyes dead. Payment cleared? He asked. Vivian nodded. You'll be added to the household staff as security tomorrow morning. Understood. Not before the ceremony, she reminded him. If she dies before, nothing transfers. He smirked. Pretty kind of you. Giving her one last day to enjoy her husband. Vivian smiled faintly. I don't waste sentimental energy. And the husband? He'll be redirected. He has a weakness, you see. She tilted her head. He believes himself rational. But love makes even the strongest men blind. The man snorted. Whatever you say, Mrs. Hart. She rested a manicured hand on the gate. The moonlight caught her diamonds, beautiful, cold. I'll call when the time is right, she said. He returned to the car. The engine hummed away. Vivian stood alone in the moonlit garden. Not mourning, not regretting, planning. Nikolai didn't speak to me again that night. He escorted me to my room with professional distance, hand never touching my back, but presence heavy enough to fill the air. Before I stepped inside, he paused. If you had known, he said without turning, would you have stayed? The answer rose like oxygen. Yes. A breath left him. Not quite relief. Not pain, either. Something between. The door closed. I leaned against it, sliding down onto the carpet. My chest ached. My hands shook. I didn't know if we were healing or breaking all over again. Maybe both. Elsewhere in the estate, Vivian stood before a mirror. She dabbed the corners of her eyes, watching how the tear would fall. Not too fast, not too slow, just enough tremble, just enough tragedy. She practiced the sigh, the tremor in the voice, the way her hand would clutch at her heart when she said, she was like a daughter to me. The reflections smiled. Perfect. A woman prepared to mourn a death she orchestrated. A mother rehearsing grief for a daughter she never loved. The knife behind the veil. The cathedral glowed like a dream that had been polished too bright, gold leaf, stained glass, and white roses arranged in perfect arches that smelled sweet enough to make me sick. The aisle stretched long and gleaming beneath me, like a stage built for someone else's life. Music rose, violins, tender and triumphant. I walked anyway. My gown whispered across marble. My hands trembled so hard I had to curl them into fists inside my bouquet. Guests turned in unison, smiling like this was a fairy tale and not a sale. At the front sat Vivian. She wore pale lavender silk and pearls, her posture relaxed, her expression warm, maternal, proud. If anyone looked at her, they would see a devoted mother giving her beloved stepdaughter away. No one would see the knife she carried inside her smile. Her eyes met mine as I walked, and just for a fraction of a breath, she tilted her chin, as if to say, "Behave." My throat tightened. The priest murmured something. The music faded. Fabric rustled like distant waves. And then, there he was. Nikolai Vasiliev. He stood at the altar in a tailored black suit, shoulders straight, presence impossibly controlled. The soft cathedral light caught the sharp line of his jaw, the stillness in his eyes, the unreadable quiet behind them. He looked carved from shadow and cold resolve. But when I stepped into the light before him, something flickered. A fracture, a memory. And I felt it too. The summer wind, salt air, his laugh against my shoulder, his whispered, "Come back to me." For a heartbeat, we were there again. But then the moment passed, swallowed by the grandeur, by the audience, by the fact that I stood here as a bride bound by contract, not love. The priest spoke. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered." The words washed over me. My pulse beat in my throat like panic trapped in a cage. Nikolai extended his hand, not softly, not tenderly, formally. Possession disguised as ceremony. I placed my palm in his, cold. He didn't look at me, not fully. His gaze stayed forward, jaw locked, breath controlled like a man holding back wildfire. "Do you take—" My voice cracked before the vow even formed. I swallowed, tried again. The cathedral was too quiet. Everyone heard the tremor. "Yes?" A breath. "I do." The words tasted like surrender. The priest turned to Nikolai. "And do you take—" But Nikolai wasn't looking at the priest. His gaze had dropped. Lower, to the necklace at my throat. Time froze. Because hanging there, barely visible beneath lace, was the silver ring he had given me 5 summers ago. The ring I had sworn I would never remove. His ring, his promise, his heart. The breath he drew wasn't steady anymore. His eyes lifted to mine, and in them I saw shock, recognition, realization. I hadn't forgotten him. I hadn't moved on. I hadn't stopped loving him. Something in him broke. His fingers tightened around mine, too tight, like he couldn't let go even if he tried. "Amelia," he breathed, soft, disbelieving. Not husband-to-be, not Mafia heir, just the boy I used to know. The priest blinked, confused. Vivian sat motionless. Her smile froze at the edges, her eyes sharpened, calculating. But Nikolai wasn't looking at either of them. He was looking at me, as if trying to rewrite 5 years of pain in the span of a single second. He opened his mouth, likely to speak the truth neither of us had dared voice. And then, his posture shifted, barely. But I knew that movement. I'd seen it once before on a crowded street corner when a man lunged with a knife. This wasn't hesitation, this was instinct. His grip on my hand loosened. His other hand slid to his coat. Not to adjust fabric, not to steady nerves, to reach the gun hidden beneath it. His eyes narrowed, not at me, but past me. The world around us blurred, the violinists faltered, the chandeliers hummed. Something was wrong, something was moving, a rustle along the pews, a shadow near the pillars. One of the guards lowered his head, not in respect but signal. Someone was about to strike. Nikolai didn't whisper, didn't warn, didn't explain. He moved, swift, precise, lethal. His coat parted, metal glinted, and in front of hundreds of horrified guests, the groom raised a gun, its barrel leveling directly over my shoulder. Gasps rippled like a wave. Vivian's eyes went wide, just for a fraction, then narrowed. The priest froze, mouth open. My breath lodged in my lungs. Nikolai didn't look at me, but his voice was a command I felt in my bones. Down. I dropped. The first gunshot shattered the cathedral silence. Then the second. Screams erupted. The chandeliers trembled. Roses scattered like snow. Chaos bloomed in white and blood red. And as the echo tore through the vaulted ceiling, I realized he hadn't been pointing the gun at me. He'd been protecting me. Just like before. Just like always. The aisle became a battlefield, and the past we tried to bury rose again, violent and undeniable. Gunfire exploded. Gunfire tore through the cathedral like thunder ripping the sky apart. Guests screamed and scattered, silk gowns dragging, jewelry flashing, chairs overturning. White rose petals lifted and swirled in the air like falling snow. Only now the snow was stained with fear and smoke and the metallic scent of gunfire. Nikolai moved before my mind caught up to the chaos. His arm wrapped around my waist, hard, unyielding, and he pulled me down behind the nearest marble pillar. My bouquet fell, rolling across the floor as more gunshots cracked. "Stay down!" he ordered, voice low, urgent. His body covered mine, shielding me completely as bullets ricocheted off the stone behind us. I could feel his heartbeat pounding through his chest. Not cold, not emotionless, alive, wild, terrified, not of the bullets, but of losing me. His guards retaliated in formation, silent signals, trained precision. Someone screamed, someone else collapsed. The choir fled, the priest ducked behind the altar. Through the smoke I saw Vivian, still seated, still smiling, but her hands were not folded like a lady's. She was texting, of course. This wasn't shock, this was orchestration. A guard grabbed her arm to escort her to safety, but she jerked away like she had authority even here. Her eyes never left me. Nikolai fired twice. 2 gunmen fell. A burst of shouts, returns of fire. Boots thundered. The cathedral trembled with violence. Then, silence. The gunmen were down. The last one fell with a thud that echoed through the vaulted ceiling. My breath came in weak, trembling gasps. Nikolai didn't move away. His hands tightened at my arms, jaw clenched, chest heaving with adrenaline and something deeper, something breaking. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. I shook my head, wordless. His eyes narrowed, searching my face like he was memorizing it again. "Then tell me why," he whispered, raw, almost strangled. "Why did you say I abandoned you?" It hit like a blade, sharp, precise, straight into the wound I had never healed. My lips parted, then closed. I'd spent years believing the answer was simple. Now, staring into the eyes of the man who once held my entire world in his hands, it felt far more complicated. I tried, I breathed. I tried to find you, to write you, to call you. I tried. His expression tightened. I waited. Every day, every month. I never heard anything. "I sent everything," I whispered. "Letters, messages. I called the number you gave me until my voice was gone. My throat closed. You didn't come." His hand curled around the stone floor like he needed something to anchor him. "Show me," he said, and I did. With trembling hands, I pulled the necklace free from beneath my gown. The ring, the one he had given me in that summer without names, glimmered in the fractured cathedral light. His lips parted, his entire body stilled. "You kept it," he said. Not a question, a revelation. "You thought I left you," I said. Vivian, she told me you moved on, that you never meant it, that I had been foolish, that I was nothing to you." His face twisted in disbelief and fury, not at me, at her. "She intercepted everything?" he asked. I nodded. "She burned my letters. Changed my phone. She told me you didn't want to be found." Nikolai closed his eyes. Just once. When he opened them, something deep inside him was no longer contained. "She stole you," he said quietly. "She stole 5 years of our lives." Footsteps clicked across marble. Vivian, escorted now by guards, but still holding the posture of a woman who believed she had control. Her voice was smooth, composed, poison dressed in silk. "I did what needed to be done," she said. "You were ruining your potential. Running away with some nameless boy. You were meant for rooms like this, Amelia, for power, not cheap summer romance and poverty." Nikolai rose slowly. He was terrifying, not when he shouted, but when he didn't. "You tried to have my wife killed at our wedding," he said. "Our contract wedding," she corrected, still smiling. "Let's not pretend this is love." He took one step toward her. Every guard in the room lifted a gun, but not at him. At her. Vivian didn't blink. "Do you think marriage secures your heart? Men like you don't love. They possess." Nikolai's voice dropped to something colder than death. "You think I don't love her?" he said. Vivian's expression twitched, the first crack. And in that crack, the whole world shifted. He extended a hand, not toward Vivian, toward me. His voice broke, barely, but it broke. I never stopped. My breath trembled. Vivian scoffed, but it was weaker now. "You are blinded." This girl, she left. "Because you made her," he snapped. The guards tightened their aim. Nikolai didn't look away from Vivian when he gave the order. "Restrain her." Vivian laughed once, brittle. "You wouldn't dare." "I have influence. I dash." The head security officer stepped forward, holding up a tablet. "Sir," he said to Nikolai, loud enough for everyone to hear, "we pulled security camera footage from the upper balcony. The feed shows Mrs. Hart coordinating the gunman." Vivian's face drained of color. The entire cathedral saw, gasps, whispers, revulsion. Vivian took a step back, fear flickering at last. Nikolai stepped forward, slow, deliberate, the execution of a truth 5 years overdue. "Drag her into the aisle," he ordered. The guards seized her arms. Vivian shrieked, heels scraping marble as they pulled her through rose petals and shattered vows. "Let go of me! Do you know who I am? Do you—" Her voice cut sharp against the cathedral walls. But no one moved to help her. Not anymore. Nikolai turned back to me, and the world, for the first time in years, made sense, and broke all at once. Because love had never left. It had only been stolen. The cathedral was still filled with smoke and gunpowder, but in that haze, we finally saw each other clearly. Vivian's screams echoed through the cathedral, wild and jagged, like something cornered. The guards forced her to her knees in the center of the aisle, where a bride should have walked toward blessing. Now it was where betrayal was laid bare, her lavender silk gown bunched and wrinkled, pearls slipping loose and scattering across marble like broken promises. "Do you think any of this was my fault?" she spat, hair disheveled, breath shaking with fury. "I did what I had to do." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with outrage that the world no longer obeyed her. Nikolai stood over her, still, controlled, terrifyingly composed. "Explain," he said. Vivian's laugh was brittle, sharp. "Do you think Amelia would have survived without me? Do you think a fragile musician, barely able to raise her voice above a whisper, could have built anything? She was weak, impressionable. She needed someone to shape her future. My hands curled in the fabric of my gown, weak. The word hung in the air like a slap. Vivian lifted her chin, addressing the room now, as if she were the one on a stage. I married into her father's house to save it. I carried the entire family after your father died, Amelia. And how did you thank me? Running off to play songs with poor men and childish dreams. Nikolai's tension sharpened, not at her insult to me, but at her insult to the boy he once was. Vivian's gaze flicked between us, and she sneered. Yes, I knew you fell for some nobody, she said, voice rising. I read those letters, those pathetic messages you cried over. So I burned them. Every last one. I wasn't going to let you throw away your life to be some nobody's wife. You were going to be useful. You were going to secure power for us. The silence after those words was suffocating. My heartbeat pulsed in my fingertips. When I spoke, my voice did not shake. You stole my voice, I said. Vivian's head snapped toward me. You told me grief was weakness. You told me my father's dreams were foolish. You took his violin, his last gift, and you threatened to break it if I disobeyed. My breathing stayed steady. You didn't carry our family. You buried it. Her mouth opened, but I didn't allow her to speak. And I was never weak, I said. I just loved, fully, fearlessly, completely. Something you never learned how to do. For the first time, Vivian recoiled, not from threat, but from truth. Nikolai's right-hand man, Dmitri, stepped forward. His presence was quiet, but final. Nikolai, he murmured. Her family name won't protect her. The other houses will not intervene. Vivian's eyes widened. No, the Lockwoods have already withdrawn support, Dmitri said. They don't back traitors. And then, the sound of heels. Serafina. Vivian's daughter stood at the aisle's edge, trembling. Her dress was immaculate, her makeup perfect, but her eyes were wide with terror. Mother, Serafina whispered. Please, stop talking. Vivian looked at her, finally, desperately. Help me, she hissed. You owe me everything. I raised you to be a queen. Serafina's lips parted, but instead of stepping toward Vivian, she stepped back. No, Serafina whispered. You raised me to be a ghost. I won't die with you. And she ran. Her heels echoed as she fled out the cathedral doors, disappearing into daylight. Vivian stared after her, stunned. She had lost her last ally. Nikolai spoke, not loud, not dramatic, just inevitable. Vivian Hart, he said, for attempted murder, conspiracy, and for theft of a future that was not yours to take. Your protection under all houses is revoked. She shook her head violently. No, you can't. Remove her, Nikolai ordered. The guards closed in. Vivian screamed, long, piercing, desperate. Amelia! Amelia, I saved you. You owe me. I didn't flinch. The doors closed behind her. The cathedral went quiet. Petals lay crushed underfoot. Candles flickered unevenly. The altar cloth was shredded where a bullet had grazed it. The wedding guests stood motionless, uncertain whether to leave or to witness what remained. But the only thing I felt was breath. A breath I hadn't been allowed in 5 years. Nikolai turned to me slowly, not as the heir to an empire, not as a man who commanded armies, but as the boy who once held my hands in the tide and whispered dreams against my skin. His voice was low, unsteady. I never stopped looking for you. The world, even shattered, held perfectly still. The cathedral emptied slowly, as though everyone sensed the moment was no longer theirs to witness. The last echoes of footsteps faded, leaving only fallen rose petals, broken glass, and the faint scent of gunpowder hanging like a memory in the air. Nikolai and I stood at the altar, where vows had been interrupted, where history had been unearthed, where truth had bled its way back into the light. He looked at me, but not with the cold calculation of a Mafia heir. His eyes were raw, open, unsure, like the boy who once held my hand in the tide and whispered that the world could be small as long as we were in it together. Slowly, he removed the ring from his finger, the one meant to seal our contract. The metal glinted under the fractured cathedral light. "Amelia," he said quietly, "you are free." The words landed like something heavy and gentle all at once. You don't owe me a marriage. You don't owe me your future. You don't owe me forgiveness. His voice roughened. The contract is void. You can walk out of here and I won't stop you. For 5 years, I had dreamed of escape. From the grief. From the lies. From the cage my stepmother built around me. From the memory of a love that felt too painful to hold. But standing before him now, I realized. Leaving had never been the point. Healing was. I stepped toward him, not because I was bound, because I chose. "I don't want to be free from you," I said. "I want to be free with you." His breath caught. "I choose you," I said, voice steady, real. Not the contract. Not the past. You. The tension in his shoulders shattered. His eyes closed just long enough for his breath to tremble, then opened again with something softer than any cathedral light could reflect. He didn't touch me. Not yet. He waited, letting me cross the final inches on my own. When my hand reached his, it wasn't pulled or possessed. It was held. Held. The rebuilding was not perfect. There were days when silence stretched between us like something uncertain, nights when memories pressed too close, moments where trust had to be relearned like a language long forgotten. But there was laughter again, tentative, then real. There were meals shared in quiet kitchen light. There were nights laying beside each other without performing or pretending, just breathing in the dark, two people learning to exist as themselves again. Nikolai began talking more. Not about business or violence, but about music and stray cats that lived near the docks, and how he used to watch sunsets on rooftops because they made the city look softer. I began playing piano again, slowly at first, hands stiff, heart afraid. Then, gradually, I remembered how to feel sound. We visited my father's grave. We rebuilt the home Vivian tried to rot out of me. And little by little, we rebuilt us. Weeks later, Nikolai drove us without explaining where. But I knew the moment the air changed. The scent of salt, the call of gulls, the horizon opening like a quiet sigh, the seaside town, where it began, where we had been just Amelia and Kolya. Two strangers who loved like the world was gentle. The sand was warm under our feet as we walked. The old boardwalk was faded, the ice cream shop now brick instead of white-painted wood, but everything recognizable enough to make my chest ache. We reached the rock-strewn stretch where I had once played him a melody on a cheap travel keyboard, laughing when the tide almost swept the instrument away. Nikolai set down a small portable piano on the rock where we once sat. "My father had it restored," he said quietly, eyes soft at the memory. "I kept it all this time." I didn't speak. I simply sat. My fingers hovered over the keys. The melody came slow at first, hesitant, like a bird remembering it still knew how to fly. Then, it flowed. The notes rose like a memory finally set free. The tune I wrote for him, the tune that held a summer's worth of wonder, grief, fear, and love in 12 simple measures. Nikolai closed his eyes. The wind moved through his hair. He listened, not as the Mafia heir, not as the man who built an empire in blood, but as the boy who once looked at me like I was the first sunrise he'd ever seen. When the final note faded into the sound of waves, he opened his eyes again. No hesitation, no fear, just love, unhidden, unguarded, unbroken. He leaned in, and when he kissed me, there was no contract in the world that could have dictated it. No obligation, no bargain, just us, finally, entirely, undeniably us. The kiss was slow, deep, and endless, like we were reclaiming every second that had been stolen. This time there was no time limit, no goodbye waiting, just the future, wide as the ocean in front of us. And as I leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his hands, the steadiness of his breath, the truth of our years circling back to this, I knew destiny had not been broken, only delayed. If this story has your attention, hit that subscribe button and let us know where in the world you're watching from. Every story we tell connects the past to the present, and we'd love to have you with us for the next one.